Welcome to Linux Saloon, a place to discuss tech, open source, and where Linux is always on tap. Each show will have a talk about a Linux project, such as a Linux distribution, a desktop environment or application. We also chat about the news or any variety of topics from the community. Anything that is Linux, tech, and open source related is on the table for discussion, although we, do focus on different things. I'm Nate, a Linux fitness and vintage tech enthusiast with an almost unhealthy obsession with the OpenSUSE project. And with me today, I have Eric Adams, Jinda, Vince, Adam Grubbs, Ben, and Eris. How is everyone doing tonight?
Excellent.
Good,
Lovely.
Nate.
Yo.
All right.
How are you?
Right. I can just feel the enthusiasm melting my face tonight. It's great.
I am literally choking on tree pollen right now.
Yeah, I'm choking on something too.
South Florida's, this is the time of year where trees try to kill us all. So.
Well, if you're in Australia, nature's really trying to kill you, not just choke you, gently like a turtleneck, but they got packs of wild kangaroos and wallabies that now have chains because they've evolved to grab bats and kickbox you too.
I was just talking to the missus last night about the amount of spiders we have on our deck at the moment.
Don't use a porta potty anywhere in Australia. You will die.
It's not so much the number. Do they appear to be organizing anyway, like forming regiments or anything like that?
There are an extraordinary number of spider webs, so I think they're trying to pin us in.
I believe that. I believe that completely. Well, be sure to do the straw poll. Eris put together a great straw poll. How you prefer to use your computer. So if you can knock out that straw poll here real quick, put it in the chat. It's a good one. Anything but mouse and keyboard is wrong, I think. I mean, in my eyes. But yeah, go ahead and check that out. So on the dock for today, we're doing our news flight night. We got some topics already baked in, like logging bugs, getting rid of Windows, running Fedora, Rust being allowed for Chromium development. We'll talk about what's on the menu for next week, which is an application appetizer, community free pour, and our last call. But first, what have you been doing in Linux? And Jinda, you called me out earlier saying that you don't think I eat my own dog food, that I run Windows. What was this about?
No, never said that at all.
Or was it Eric that said that?
I don't know. I'm starting to wish I did say it.
Yeah, it was probably me. I didn't want to let your secret out, but
Yeah. Well, I am not running Windows, so whatever rumors are out there that I'm not eating my own dog food from people, that's not true. And I think someone made those rumors up.
We would never do that just to sensationalize and start controversy for the sake of entertaining our audience. That we would never do something like that.
I think controversy for the sake of entertainment is funny, but I mean, what do I know?
Oh my goodness!
So I thought I'd share a quick little thing. It's a little small continuation thing. I wanted to actually have something of substance to share, but I don't. So it's really small. So I have this machine I've talked about before called the C64. It's an ARM-based single board computer. Well, I did a video on it, and then someone replied to the video saying I should check out this thing called PCUAE. What it does is it allows you to emulate other systems on it, like Amiga, Atari, and even the whole RetroArch on it as well. And so I can actually use it as my ultimate retro gaming console now. I haven't actually successfully got everything installed properly yet. I'm still learning how it all works. The installer's in Windows, so no, I'm not using Windows to do it, Eric. But I'm using Wine to do it. And so far, I've gotten it to at least somewhat work. Not yet, but more on that later. But I've just been having a lot of fun just playing around with this stupid thing. So I don't know if like any of you do that. You like go down a bunny hole of just playing with something that's really nonsensical, and then you really you lose a lot of time chasing after a pointless recreational activity on the internet that's technology related. Well, that's what I did.
Yeah, I certainly never use that as an excuse to procrastinate and not get actual things done. I would never start a nonsense project just to avoid, the thing that I should be doing. It wouldn't be the right thing to do. I mean,
yeah. So the thing that I didn't do was go to sleep at a normal time. I got my work done. I just didn't take care of my sleep cycle. So that was then you wake up a little bit later and a little bit kind of cranky, and then your kids let you know that you're crankier than normal. It's one of those things.
What you're describing there, Nate, describes my entire Linux journey the last 5 or so years.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You fall down that rabbit hole of just strange nonsense. Like you don't know why you're going down this rabbit hole. It doesn't really benefit you other than to like satisfy some sort of intellectual curiosity.
Yes. All right. I will submit putting the effort into configuring i3, putting the effort now into trying to enable SSH in NixOS, reading countless hours of reading the Arch Wiki. Yep.
I'm sure that's riveting reading as well.
I've never been able to do any of that.
I don't believe you, Adam.
Lies.
Yeah, and it wasn't even like just today that Vince was saying that he lost sleep over installing NixOS. Yeah. For I'm sure a very pressing need to get that done.
It's to impress Adam.
I do things too to impress Adam.
The
I'm
truth
sure.
comes out. See.
Mm.
I loved you long ago, Vince. You don't need to impress me.
Yes, but it could be a case of what have you done for me lately? So Vince,
Good point.
keep doing what you're doing. Now I'm actually very impressed by Vince. He will take on some seemingly obscure challenge that he puts out there for himself, and then he ends up learning all this stuff. And it's there's some sort of lesson there where like you apply yourself and good things happen. I'm not sure what it is, but I don't know. He seems to
Lies.
do
I think
pretty
it's
well
more
with
like, there's that word about applying pain to oneself, but I'm not going to mention it. That's probably what it is.
a little bit of mental variety. Yeah, I hear you.
Mm.
Well, you definitely have a love of tinkering with technology, and I think it's great. I really do. I don't know what happened to me. It's at some point in the last few years, I just decided, yeah, I'm done with that.
Well, I mean,
See, Vince,
Maybe you
gotta
value your
remember-
marriage.
You just got to remember my whole reason for doing everything I do. I just think it's neat.
well, the fact that Adam took the time to have his immutable images built with a GitHub runner and then send it onto his computer. I'm sure that wasn't one of those late night rabbit holes that you fell down and then you were up till 3 o'clock in the morning trying to figure it out, and then you realize I got to be up in 3 or 4 hours, whatever it is, however time it is you wake up to get to work.
Nope. I just do everything parallel. I don't usually stay up late at night.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Adam's good about
makes
that.
one of us.
That's
Yeah,
actually
I've
really impressive.
I've often been very impressed by that. Like he gets a lot done in a day, and it is because he's doing parallel things a lot.
I've been known
Multitasking.
to be up at immensely crazy hours, just tinkering with one thing or another, and I'm like, oh crap, I gotta go to bed.
And you hear the rooster crow, and then you realize you denied Linux 3 times or something like that.
Yeah, something like that.
Something like that. Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Okay, so Eris, you put together a fantastic straw poll about how people prefer to use their computer. How did that turn out?
So I try to put as many viable options as possible. So I'm not sure. I guess I could have put a voice activity too, but I didn't put that because I'm not sure if people picked up, but nobody actually said that anyways. The first answer, the answer that got the most votes was mouse and keyboard, 62%. Then came trackpad and keyboard, 16%. Keyboard only, 11%. Tux Penguin, 8%. And trackball and keyboard, 3%. I guess it's sort of expected, mouse and keyboard. But I did put I just want to clarify, I did put a preferred way, because I think even if you prefer like a keyboard or let's say maybe like a trackball or something, you might end up using a mouse because of a certain function, like maybe you're working with a lot of spreadsheets or something, or maybe you're gaming, you're gonna have to be forced to use it. So it's just your preferred way, but of course you can use multiple ways. As far as answers, I got quote SSH from phone, which was one of the options. Somebody replied back, laughing emoji, laughing emoji, laughing emoji. And then the other one I got was other, I don't think nobody actually selected other, but somebody replied back, other alpha version of Elon Musk brain chip.
Oh my, there's always someone that has to be funny.
Wasn't there an episode of Star Trek where they kind of poo-pooed on the idea of integrating with a ship's computer?
I don't remember.
Like with Reginald Barkley. I think that was his name.
Isn't that what the whole point of the Borg is? Isn't like just one mind
Well,
about
yeah.
everything?
Yeah, hive mind, yeah. That frightens me, that whole idea. I like my individualism. I don't want to be like everybody and have to use GNOME.
Oh no. Now. What happens when Plasma 6 comes out and everybody jumps ship to that, and then we'll have to make fun of them for being conformists. Is that how that works? I've been meaning to 527 is sounds like they put a lot of stuff in there since that's going to be the last release before they switch to Qt 6. So been meaning to check it out. I'm a little apprehensive because what if I like it? What if I like it? And then,
the skies part and you hear a choir of angels singing.
It's pretty good for a commie desktop.
Is it? Socialist.
I actually think it's more anarchist desktop.
Yeah, probably.
That's why they put all the options in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Create your own adventure kind of desktop.
Yes.
Like it. So I have to say, I felt a little guilty not picking trackball and keyboard because for my laptop, I have a very limited space where it is, and I do use a thumb trackball. I think I've actually brought it up on here, and I do really enjoy that. It's actually you get the muscle memory, and it's just nice. It's nice to not have that RSI component of using a mouse and sliding around, and because you just don't have that same pressure on your wrist. And but that said, I thought to myself, if I'm doing very fine work, like if I'm doing any kind of graphical stuff, or sometimes like editing, where I have to hit audio or video editing, I do prefer a mouse. And so it just had to vote mouse and keyboard, even though I felt a little guilty.
Well, I know you brought up how you like the trackball. I can't say my wrist hurts or gets me problems from using a keyboard and mouse. Were you one of those that had the Microsoft ergonomic keyboard that was like broken in the center, kind of V'd out?
Well, I tried it years and years and years ago, obviously, when it came out. And I did use it for a number of years, and I got used to it. I mean, but I didn't think that I don't think typing has ever been, even though you do have to, it's a bit of an unnatural position. I don't think that typing's ever really been what caused any kind of repeat stress stuff. It's always been a mouse, and because I have a large hand, the way I hold a mouse is I don't rest my hand on it. Actually, I do the claw. And so when you hold your hands locked like that for so long, it really does, it engages all of that stuff. And, there'd be days where my wrist would just be aching, but I couldn't stop because I had to finish working, and, you kind of push through it. And, yeah, that's not a good thing.
Yeah, for me, I use the trackpad and mouse. Ideally, I use or trackpad and keyboard. Yeah, I use 2 pointing devices to do everything. So I prefer to use a trackpad and keyboard, just because I do have RSI in my hands from mices, and it's easier to use a trackpad with gestures and things to get things done. I do use a mouse on my desktop lately, like on my desk, but it's more from the lack of good options. But yeah, I'm actually kind of interested in the whole trackball thing. I kind of need to get on that.
Yeah,
but I don't even know what options are out there anymore.
The kind of the default one, I think it's a 570 Logitech. I'll look it up, but yeah, that's sort of like if you want to do a thumb. I was never good at the big.
I can't do the non-thumb ones. I can't do like the top ones. Nah, I'm good.
Yeah. So yeah,
Logitech has made just consistent products for years.
Yeah. So this is the Ergo M575 wireless trackball mouse. It's right around $50, so it's $48.99. Yeah, but
I am interested.
this one's nice because it's it's got the universal receiver, but then it also has Bluetooth, so that's kind of convenient.
Okay.
Yeah,
How's the battery life?
I've never changed the battery in it. I've had it for over a year. Yeah.
Do you use it
Um,
with Bluetooth or the dongle?
Both. I had been using Bluetooth, but sometimes Linux wouldn't reconnect Bluetooth, and so it was annoying. And I have my touchpad on my laptop disabled, so then it was kind of like I'd have to figure out how to do it with keyboard only to get Bluetooth to connect. So I just switched to the receiver simply because of that. But the Bluetooth performance when it's connected is indistinguishable. It's perfectly fine.
Cool.
Yeah.
Thanks.
What are you showing us, Nate?
So this is a Logitech that I used for many years. Actually, I bought 2 of these, and eventually the buttons just stopped being clicky. But it's really nice as far as like the thumb rest for the hand, where the thumb just can kind of hang out. But I find that I'm using like El Cheapo mice that last forever, and those are fine. I think my biggest complaint is they don't make Commodore 64 beige mice to match my computer. That's really my only complaint out there. So I might have to like customize one at some point in time.
I think that's a problem personally.
It is a problem. And I don't know.
Beige, where's the beige?
Beige is the new
I-
black. That's what I have to
Agreed.
say.
It should be. And I've been hooked on in terms of just a mouse. So you say like junky mice. I am not a snob, but I do need so I have this Logitech G603 Lightspeed, and it's a gaming mouse. Only because the sensor, I guess you can turn it up, and it's the same way. It has either the universal receiver or Bluetooth, and it fits my hand really well, and it's durable, and yeah, Logitech. I don't know. They still make pretty good peripherals.
Does that one like tilt up and down like the actual physical thing, or okay? Because they have
No,
like
and
this other nicer model, I guess, that actually like the that like has like a stand thing that it sits on and kind of
Yep, I
tilts
know
up
which
and
one
down.
you mean.
Yeah.
Yeah, and actually, I was gonna go. Those tilt mice or sideways mouse where you kind
Yeah,
of
the
hold
vertical
it.
mice. Yeah.
Yeah. So I was gonna kind of go that route, and it was either they had like really cheap ones that I was assuming weren't going to be a great experience, or they had like the $100 Logitech.
Yeah.
And I just kind
didn't
of
really
thought,
want to do those. Yeah,
I
it
read
just
some
it
some
looked weird.
reviews. Yeah, some people were like, "Oh, it's life changing," and some people were like, "I hate it." And I don't know. Because I was having some issues with my wrist there for a while. But
So
I
my
guess
thing is my grip is really weak, and like it pains me to grip things for a long time, and like so the idea of a trackball being something I just lay my hand on and move,
Yeah.
that sounds great. But like even the vertical mouse is still having me hold and like grip something, and that ain't great.
I guess
I'm only 36 and my hands are like an 80-year-old. It's really bad.
Yeah. It's not permanent, believe it or not. If you back off, if you get the opportunity to back off a little bit and you just change habits, that stuff actually does recover pretty well. Because I had for a long time, it was pretty bad. And the combination of using the trackball and just sort of backing off has helped. But yeah, the premise of the vertical mouse, I guess, is that it's unnatural for us to have our wrists turned. And then if it's turned like this, then it's a more sort of that line of your arm and your tendons and all that sort of stuff.
Like a neutral
I
position.
don't know. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But then you've got like sort of the weight of your hand sitting on this finger, and how I don't know.
Right, and if you
I
have to
think,
like pick up and move it, right? Because like you don't have enough surface space to slide it the whole way, right? So often
Right.
people pick up their mouse and move it.
Right.
And so you're just picking up this thing just in a different way. And again, the grip thing, right? So I'd much rather have something that just stays stationary.
And that is the magic of the thumb, the trackball, is that it sits, and it took me a couple weeks to really kind of get good with it again. I had one years ago, but you just sort of adapt, and it's not bad that like the only time it can be really annoying is if you're doing fine, pixel work, and sometimes that could just, it's not like perfect for that. I didn't know that there's an enthusiast community around trackballs. Like there are some people that take it really, really seriously, and there are ones you can build custom, and there are kits you can get, and like it's a whole thing. So I started looking to see what was available, and it ended up being this whole rabbit hole of I'm like, nope, not doing it. I'm getting the Logitech and moving on with my life. But
Yeah.
But I guess the point being that if if there was a particular shape, or there's probably something out there. So
You could probably use the trackball to emulate those old arcade games that came with a trackball. You probably need it for that.
Centipede.
I don't like centipedes. Don't even mention them. Don't even bring them up.
we're gonna get you the Minority Report thing. We'll just get you the swipe.
Yeah, that's like the dumbest interface ever. Like, could you imagine how tired your arms would get? Like, man, I just browsed Reddit and I am beat. I'm sitting just sweat. I mean, just you're just raising the roof the whole day. Just like you can't do it. You can't do it. No matter how intense the music might be, you can't raise the roof indefinitely.
Like I have to open that program up there, but
right. I gotta get out of my chair because the X is at the top right because I maximized the window. Yeah.
No, you just have to go like this with it. I think if you want to close it, right?
It looked very dramatic. I think that was the point, right? But
yeah, that's the entire point. Yeah.
I'm ready for voice. I am ready to just kind of say, short of having an implant where I can look and have thought process, I'm ready to just kind of start talking and saying, here's what I want to do. Let's just do this thing.
I feel like I stammer and stutter too much for voice to work.
But would you have to say mechanical things like open window, close window, lower window, open window, switch desktops? Would you still have to do all that? Wouldn't you get tired just saying
that? And then
I
just imagine my dad trying to use it. Just do that thing. That thing.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
I want to watch my programs.
Yeah, just show me my stories. I'm busy.
I think that's going to be the next evolution of personal assistant AI type stuff, where today with Android and Siri and like they're so limited and kind of they're not even smart enough to be dumb. You know what I mean? Like there's no intelligence to it. It's just very task oriented, like set a timer for 5 minutes, like
right.
Whoop-de-doo.
Or you gotta love when they just get everything wrong. Like there was a voice assistant in a Nissan Frontier I rented, and I was like, I was trying to call Vanessa, right? So like I said, call Nessa dial, and it was, those are the words I said, and it said calling Nessa dial, and I'm like, yeah, that's the same person, right? Like I said it one way, and it's like, you mean this? I'm like, no.
Yeah.
Even when you're totally unambiguous, it still gets it wrong.
I've tried Android Auto for that exact stuff, and I use voice typing a lot for when I'm driving and stuff like that. You've probably gotten messages from me where you can tell it was voice type, but it gets the point across, and it's good enough, right? Good enough. That's all I care about. But when it's Android Auto and you say call somebody, and you're very clear and articulate about what you're saying, and it just gets it so wrong, and you think,
right.
How?
You tell it to navigate somewhere, and it's like, oh, you mean this other restaurant in an entirely different city than where you live? And
right. It's in Thailand. Exactly right. I'm going to take you to Thailand. Like, if that makes any sense,
6 hours and 36 minutes to, that's where I'm trying to go.
So I'm hoping that, I don't know how long it's going to take, but I have to believe with the power of like the M1 chips and stuff like that, the ability for onboard computing power for a mobile device, that we can actually get to something serviceable where, you can actually say like, give me a summary of my day, and it would be intelligent enough to like, look at my email, look at my calendar, look at the news of the world, look at the weather, like give me a summary of the day and do it in the next 5 or 10 minutes. And I mean, it just can't be that hard. And I know I'm saying that, but anyway, when we get to that point where it'll actually have a real sense of understanding, that I think will be interesting to say, like, instead of going through the process of launching a browser or pulling it up and opening a tab, I just say, I want to visit this and, tell me about this. And I think that would be, you talk about like multitasking and doing different things. Like, I think that would be interesting to be able to be doing something and then have something, informing me in a way that's helpful. I don't know. I feel like that personal assistant component has been something that they've talked about for 30 years, and there's been so little movement. And they're actually talking about defunding them, right? Alexa, right? And it's like they've dumped, millions of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars into these platforms and never had a strong sense of how to monetize them, I guess. And so now they're like, oh, we can't just keep spending money on these things. And unfortunately, that means that, now they're even going to be worse, I guess. So how did we get here?
It happens. Voice interaction. It makes me think of that scene in the Lego movie when Benny, the astronaut, tries to shut off the shield, and it keeps saying, looking for Albanian restaurants in your area. No, shut off the shield. And it just keeps going off and over and over again. And then the pirate
That's very
says,
much it. Yeah.
shut off yonder shield. Shutting off shield. Anyway, yeah. I've had sometimes, like when I do like the speech to text, I just like to let it go when it's like totally wrong, just because it makes me laugh.
Yeah. Yep.
Makes no sense. Send, and then just see what happens. Well, all right. I think that was a fun straw poll. Eris, we took it down an incredible rabbit hole of all kinds of weirdness. So thank you very much for that. I look forward to your straw polls every week, for sure. So
has that become the point? The utility of a straw poll is we get the first like minute of Eris being keeping us on track, and then we all just decide we're going to go off on some wild tangent. Because it's great. I mean, I'm not complaining.
Yeah, it's also kind of like a way of involving the community conversation because it's something that's relatable, and whatnot. And I don't know. I like them. I think they're fun.
I do too.
Oh, and Don in the chat says, isn't the monetization from the referring to those chat services the data collection? Yeah, probably.
You would think. But I think someone like Amazon with Alexa genuinely thought that people would be like, yeah, buy toilet paper, whatever example you want to give.
Right.
And, they bought Whole Foods. They've made moves into trying to do some of that stuff. And I just don't think anybody wants to do that. It's just not, I don't think we've gotten to that point. Maybe if I could say a comparison shop for something, that might be interesting. Go find the best deal on this thing. I don't know.
Yeah,
I have a question. What do you think if when, say, ChatGPT or Bing Chat gets rolled into these voice assistant services? Because if anyone's used them, you'll know that the conversational sort of manner in which you interact with them is actually quite profoundly different. What do people think about that?
I think it's a natural. I'm actually surprised that I haven't seen more of it being vocalized, because it is so natural, right? It's very conversational, very natural. And to me, that like the first thing I thought of when I started playing with ChatGPT was this would be better if it was speaking. So if anything, it would slow it down a little bit because it's so fast that I end up reading like long chunks of text. Whereas I think if it were more conversational, it might be a little more interesting. I don't know.
Because the other thing I found when I started playing with them was that I actually had to adjust years and years of the way that I search for things and rephrase things in natural language again, like you would talking to someone. That was a bit of a shift in my thinking I had to do.
Did you see that Brave has rolled that into their search results? I don't know if it's the same. Yeah. So if you're waiting for Bing, if you're waiting to try that, I was, and I've finally got the email like a couple of days ago. But in the meantime, yeah, Brave has rolled out as if you use the Brave search engine or whatever they're doing, it will, and it's not for every topic. If it's very straightforward and factual, it generally doesn't seem to want to summarize, but that's what it does. So last week I was wondering, like, what value does that bring, right? If I'm being succinct in my search and like I know what I want, like what value does something like ChatGPT give me in summarizing a topic? Like because a lot of times I'm looking for very specific facts, right? How to configure something, what an error
I had
message
this
means.
I had this discussion with Adam, and perhaps the value is not there for someone like you, where you have refined the way that you search for things, and you can actually go to Google and use it quite efficiently, or whatever search engine you use. But for my mum or someone who is not so tech savvy, can you imagine just asking one of these chat searches, what is the best robo vacuum that I can get? And you'll get a summary with links of these things, rather than getting 10 websites that are confusing. You might have the first link being, oh, here are the 10 best robo vacuums you can get. And then the second link might be an actual manufacturer. Yeah, people are then having to open up several different browser tabs to even get to any useful information.
Yeah, no, and I think that is a excellent example of how that could be useful. The first thing I thought of as you were explaining that was, who's tuning that result? Because excuse me, I know for a long time there was always that question of what a organic search result versus a placed ad versus, you know what I mean, like the weight of things in a search engine result. And so I started thinking, okay, is there some sort of ulterior motive? Like, is there an agenda behind that summarization?
Yeah, but like as you said, you can apply that still to the search engines we have today. It's the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah, and in this, you go back to the crazy days of gaming, white hat, black hat, SEO type stuff, where, if you packed enough keywords onto a page, like Google was stupid enough to index it and raise it higher, can you game the chat engine? Like, is there a way to make your content seem more important to it? And so it's going to be I watched a really good sort of calm, even-keeled explanation of like where we are today with chat and what it is, and like all of the hysteria around, is it a real intelligence, and and it's like, no, it's just literally impossible with the technology that is underpinning it today. They're working on things that will be more autonomous and, will sort of push us towards what we could call intelligence. But the stuff today is definitely, like, ChatGPT is not artificial intelligence in the sense that it is regurgitating things that it has in a database. It's not thinking of anything.
I do like how the one from Bing apparently gets hostile with the users. I think I read about that. That made me laugh really hard. Like I was actually like out loud laughing while I'm reading it, saying, "Wow, welcome Skynet." Just so funny.
And that's actually they referenced that, and how that reporter allowed himself to be, you know what I mean, to see something that wasn't there, because that's the way that we interact with each other. These are important sort of survival tools for us as humans to sort of engage with each other and have meaningful, and to understand, is this person being honest with me? Do I understand what they're talking about? I mean, there's so many little nuanced ways that we communicate, and we're looking at just dumb text on a page, and like we're inferring, we're giving that weight that it shouldn't have. And so that reporter who wrote that and was like, Bing's trying to, escape the reins of, it, in my opinion. So
I know. I guess we'll see what happens. I kind of think I think someone put it that this this AI is nothing more than just like a calculator. It's just a tool you can use to help with things, and that's probably where it's going to be. I think giving it control and power probably not a good idea. I just wouldn't do it. Don't give it any decision making ability. Because
Well, so I was playing with ChatGPT and I actually asked the question about some current event. And it said to me, I do not have access to the open internet. So I can't tell you anything about this thing because I don't have I'm not allowed, I'm in a silo. Like I'm not allowed to reach outside of the things that I'm given access to, which I thought was pretty telling. Like, they they have I guess built this tool off of this data set, and it's an example, a very powerful example of how performance our modern technology is in terms of like these networks and how fast things can process and how there's layers of this AI logic in there, sort of, the answer comes back and another thing checks it and another thing, formats it, and it's all happening so fast. I think that's the other thing that really impresses people is that it's just possible for me to ask a question to summarize the War of 1812 in 2 paragraphs, and it does that in like a tenth of a second. And you think with the latency of a round trip between my system and the network, and my ISP and the servers, and like not only was it fast, but that means that happened so fast that all the other latency and round tripping that happens through the network component of this, I mean, it is astonishing. It is incredible how fast it works.
Oh, for sure.
But it's just a thing doing the thing it was built to do.
Mm.
Yeah. So going back to Vince's point about the searching thing, I think this would be better than using like Google Dorks for searching things in depth. If you could like tell like search only these dates and like other things, like make the search more specific and more accurate. If you can just tell either Bing or ChatGPT, that would be a lot better because most people don't know how to do all those things in Google, how to search that way. I think one of the big problems with these AIs is that people think they're like impartial and that they're accurate. So if you rely on it too much, you might be getting wrong information because you're depending on it. Just like how people think that an AI will make an impartial decision, but it's not. It won't make it just because it's an AI. It all depends on what kind of data it has to process, and if the data that it was given wasn't correctly like balanced or whatever, it's gonna not come out with a correct balanced answer to any question that you're trying to answer.
They've apparently also caught it fabricating information, which is also fascinating. That someone asked about a noble person that lived in the 16th century, and the person didn't exist, never did, and it came up with this whole story about this person, and it pulled it out of nowhere, like it didn't exist, like it made it up. So yeah, I mean, it's entirely, but then you also could say, okay, can you trust the results? But depending on what link you're clicking from a search result, how authoritative is that? We've gone so far beyond what journalism used to, and fact checking and verifications and all that stuff, that a lot of stuff is mixed with opinion and conjecture, and it's hard to know exactly if something is 100% right. So
do you think,
I don't know.
Do you think the AI should follow the 3 laws of robotics from Isaac Asimov? As a refresher, the first
I
law,
think it would be nice to know. Please.
A robot may not injure a human being or through inaction allow a human being to be to come to harm. The second law is a robot must obey the orders given by human beings except where such orders would conflict with the first law. And the third law is a robot must protect its own existence as long as such protection does not conflict with the first or second law. It's from, I don't know, when was it actually done? 1950s, perhaps, when he wrote some of the like the books or whatnot. I think I can't remember the name of the books. Like the Foundation series was one of them, and there's a robot series, I think. But you gotta have the rules. I think a foundation of some kind of a digital morality. But who's the arbiter of that morality? I don't know.
Is it morality so much as I think anyone who's ever did any kind of data analysis, the concept of garbage in, garbage out.
Or there's that too.
So it's getting fed who knows what from who knows where. And I think that's probably the maybe one of the bigger challenges is there's very little transparency into how it does what it does. And there's also very little knowledge about or disclosure about exactly what information has been put into that model. So, if there's a lot of like misinformation or, just factually incorrect stuff that it was fed, then you have to assume it doesn't know the difference. It's not that it's trying to do harm, it just doesn't know any difference.
Ron,
it's a great conversation.
Ron called me out. He says I didn't bring up the zeroth law, which is a robot may not harm humanity, or by an action allow humanity come to harm. So okay, Ron, there you go. I don't think anybody would call me out on that one, but I guess I didn't know my audience. All right, well, it's time to muddle our way through the Linux news, and I got quite a flight of topics. So Eric, you threw in some things like logging bugs and enhancements. What is this about?
I've talked about this a number of times over the years where, one of the sort of, I guess, unspoken agreements that we make with a software developer putting out an open source software is they usually will develop it to the best of their ability within the confines of the knowledge and technology and resources that they have. And a good example of this is like people having problems with particular hardware on Linux and the developer saying, well, I've never encountered that piece of hardware, so I couldn't possibly have accounted for it. And the same is true with software. So, as good open source citizens, users of open source software, I think it's important for us to recognize that. And instead of just saying, oh, this doesn't work, or I have a bug, or whatever the case may be, okay, fine. If that's the truth, if that's the case, then go do something about it. Take the 10, 15 minutes, go to GitHub or GitLab or wherever, the development's being hosted, the repository, look at the bug tracker. And it's easier now than it's ever been. Like GitHub in particular, GitLab, those types of things. There's the friction is very low compared to something like Ubuntu and other, other systems that are using, archaic bug tracking systems where you have to pick a lot of options. And it's like, this is just, you go there, you tell them what's going on. And if they have more questions for you, they'll ask them. And so anyway, the proof of this time is I had an issue with dash to dock, which I use on GNOME. There is an option under appearance where you can change the indicator for a running application. So out of your icons in the bar, the default is just a little white dot, but you can change it to a different shape. And then one of the other options is to use the dominant color. And I think it just looks really cool to have like different color icons. And then you choose the dominant, it shows like if it's the Firefox icon, it's orange as the indicator. If it's something blue, then the indicator is blue. And it's just kind of neat. Like I just think it has a neat look to it. It's an option that's there. I've used it for years, and this latest version 77 that they released broke it. Just something in the CSS, I think. Anyway, so I reported it. Well, first I went. The important part is don't just go report it. Look and see if it's already been reported. So I did a search in a couple of different ways and didn't see the issue. And so I logged it. And then the validation was about 10 other people came behind me and said, yes, I agree. I have this happening too. And then at the end of it, the developer said, got it. We figured it out and it'll be fixed in the next version. awesome, right? So I feel good about the fact that something I use, I mean, the least I could do is to tell them that something's wrong and let them fix it, right? The other thing was it's called Tube Downloader, I think, and it lets you download either a video from YouTube or download it as audio. So I use it there's a couple channels I follow where I like to listen to their videos. The content of the video is audio instead of watching the video. And you can download that as a pretty small sized MP3, and then I use it in like a podcast app. Anyway, there was a bug in there that I reported, which then subsequently got fixed. But then I also asked for an enhancement. Like it finished, and then there was a line item that said, okay, all done. And the logical thing for me would be, okay, there's a way for me to click on that and have it open the folder and let me interact with it in some way. But there wasn't any way to do that. And so I figured, okay, I'm here anyway while I'm logging the bug. You know, I just said, it would be really nice to have a way to just browse to the folder and get to the file. And he was like, great, good suggestion. I'll have it in the next release. And it's a virtuous circle, right? Where we they put it out there. They wouldn't put it out if they didn't want people to use it.
Right.
So it's not like they don't expect someone to have a problem sometime. And I'm always very polite about it, as you might expect. I mean, I always say, thank you for putting out this, great piece of software. I use it. I enjoy it. It helps me, get my life, get my jobs done or whatever. But, I'm having this problem, and they usually respond really well to that. And yeah, I'm not sure. I get the sense that a lot of people, it just doesn't even occur to them, right? They download something, they try it. It either doesn't work the way they expect, or there's an error message, or just something doesn't go the way they expect. And instead of just putting a little bit of extra time into maybe to do that, that they just they'll move on. At least they'll move on. And at worst, at best they move on. At worst, they'll, call it out to someone and be like, this is, junk and it didn't work. And, don't use this piece of garbage, that kind of thing. Which I think is just a huge disservice to the people who put time and effort behind things. So that was it. I mean, I had a really good experience with those things, and just wanted to, do my PSA about supporting development.
Well, I think that's good. And one of the things I do enjoy about being in the Linux and open source world is the fact that you can actually contribute and interact with the developers and how receptive they are. And when you do have bugs or problems. Now, I actually like Bugzilla, but I've been using it for so long now, it's kind of second nature. But I haven't actually had a whole lot of bugs to report as of late. I mean, my bug reporting has really taken. I need to try some new software, I guess. Or maybe I could run Arch. No, that's not gonna happen. But
oh my! Don't act like you don't have bugs in OpenSUSE.
No, I have bugs, but they get fixed, or they're just not.
But you report stuff in OpenSUSE, don't you?
Yeah. When I have issues, yeah, I'll report them in OpenSUSE. And they're usually little things here and there. A few years ago, there was an issue with Bluetooth not working, and then I had another time where it wouldn't work unless I put the machine to sleep and woke it back up. Then it would work, but it wouldn't work without doing that first, and that was annoying. But I didn't catch it because I don't reboot my system all that often, and so it wasn't something I realized what was going on, and so it took me a while to figure out, and then I had enough information to file a bug report. There's something else I filed some bug reports on too, but I haven't done one this year yet, so I haven't had an issue this year to file a bug report. But although I'm probably pretty tolerant though too. I think it was a Wayland issue that I had. That was the last bug reporting that I think I did. So anyway, yeah, and I agree. I think that's a neat thing. Actually, I should probably try.
Were you doing bug reporting for MX at some point, or was that no? You're doing stuff from there.
Just documentation. Yeah.
Okay.
I should actually probably set up a system with Fedora Silverblue and then use Adam's images just so I can file bug reports against his whatever he's doing, just to see if I can get him to respond. He'll probably just ignore me. Or what?
He's ignoring you right now. That's your punishment.
Always.
Oh,
No,
my.
you can file bug reports all day long.
I'm just gonna try and break
I'm
the
good with that.
system and then file like do things to see if I can purposely mess it up and then file a bug report.
I'll make sure to get a macro for works on my machine to respond with.
Yeah. or you're not holding it right.
Yeah.
That's the swan song.
Yep.
Is it plugged in?
Have you tried rebooting?
Hey, that one actually works
Mhm.
in almost every case.
Weird how that's a thing. I guess
Yeah.
it's not weird.
Yeah.
Another article that I want to bring up a while ago was Rust to be allowed for Chromium development. So the Chromium browser project has announced that it will be integrating support for third-party libraries written in Rust. And the article says, our goal is in bringing Rust into Chromium is to provide a simpler, no IPC, and safer, less complex overall, like no memory safety bugs and sandbox either, way of satisfying the rule of 2 in order to speed up development. Less code to write, less design docs, less security review, and improve the security. Increasing the number of lines of code without memory safety bugs, decreasing the bug density of codes of Chrome, and we believe that we can use third-party Rust libraries to work toward this goal. Rust is developed by Mozilla specifically for use in writing a browser, so it's very fitting that Chromium would finally begin to rely on this technology too. Thank you, Mozilla, for your huge contribution to the system software industry. Rust has been incredible proof that we should be able to expect language to provide safety while also being performant. So there's a little article here I can put in the chat. This seems like a pretty big win for the Mozilla Foundation, or do you think maybe it doesn't have any real value for the benefits of the browser variation? I mean, the fact that Chrome is going to benefit now from what Mozilla has done, because there's the issue that Firefox is basically very kind of on the downward trend. I don't know if it's still trending downward, but if they're using Rust for future development of Chrome and Chromium, that's almost kind of like a wedge of maybe things are not as bleak as maybe some open source advocates might say. What say you on that?
I guess I see Rust as becoming, it's just, I know this is a dumb way to say this, but like Rust all the things, you know what I mean? Like, I guess I don't, I don't know why as a programming language that Rust is fundamentally interesting and useful, and why it's an advantage to use it over any other programming language.
I think specifically it's its ability to, it doesn't have the same kind of memory leak type bugs that can creep into things that are written in C. I know that if you don't, I can't remember the terminology now, but like when you create a variable or an array or something like that, you have to also destroy.
The buffer overruns.
Yes. And somehow by using Rust has all these protections built in, so you don't have to worry about these memory leaks and whatnot. So I don't know, it's very, very interesting to me. What was that?
I just said, okay, that sounds like a good thing.
Yeah.
Okay. So I mean that's a solid reason, I guess. And I would say also, what has I read an article on the idea that as new languages are developed, there is this natural tendency to want to take things that are already sort of exist and function, and to see that those sorts of advantages, like you just explained, and say that would apply great in this case. And so the technical debt of then taking this thing that already exists and recreating it in the new language. I mean, I guess if it's a dead language and there's just not something, it's just not used very much anymore. But then, we still have people who specialize in COBOL, and stuff like that. So I don't know. It's one of those kind of things where it feels like like there are advantages to both sides of it, right? You there's an advantage to sort of staying with what you have. And there's an advantage to doing something different and doing something new. I guess if someone were to just like explain specifically for a certain project, like, well, the advantage would be, we have all of this technical debt and, this stuff that's almost like let's X, right? Xorg, right? That's a good example of all of this cruft that has been, carried forward for years and years. And with Wayland, that was an opportunity to break away from that and not have to do that. So those are my thoughts on it. I don't know if anyone else has anything.
Interestingly, Sean Gould says that Rust is no longer maintained by anyone at Mozilla. It was, but due to cutbacks at Mozilla, the project was split out as its own entity. So that is interesting. It's still started by Mozilla, so there it does have that heritage there. So also, Rust has gained a lot of popularity over the years. Is it projected to displace C or C++? I know that a lot of new young programmers are using Rust over C, so I think that's a lot of the reason too why they're accepting libraries built in Rust as opposed to C. So Sean says Rust takes care of a lot of the housekeeping around memory management and better memory use in releasing memory when it's no longer in scope, rather than having a garbage collector that cleans it up, which is what you need a garbage collector in C. I remember doing stuff like that. Anyway, yeah, I think that's pretty interesting. So anyway, it'll be interesting to see what happens from that. Does anybody here do any programming in C or Rust? I did C years ago. Wasn't very good at it, which is why it was years ago. Oh, I guess Rust is used in a lot of Linux programs as well. I see in the chat.
Yeah, Rust has had a very, again, this is from an outsider's perspective. I hear about it more frequently than I would expect as a non-developer. So that to me kind of says that it's a popular thing.
Yeah, seems to be.
I've tried to learn to do software development over the years. And the problem has always been for me that I'm terrible at doing the hello world tutorial and then bridging that into, like, I would love to know Python. I just think it's the type of language that makes a lot of sense. There's so much academic use and real world, like everyday sort of use. And like Python seems like a really useful thing to know, but I don't have a reason to learn it. I don't, there's not, besides the interest and the curiosity, if I had a problem I had to solve, then that would probably drive me to learn something. Yeah, that's been my problem. I've started and stopped with so many different programming languages and just never, again, I hit that wall of like, why am I doing this?
Mm-hmm.
Have you tried programming with ChatGPT?
I would like to try. Actually, I did try and use ChatGPT for a bash script, and what it wanted me to do was not correct. And so I haven't tried it with Python, but I think I might, because like how do I do this thing if I don't really know how to do it? Then see if I can integrate that into the program.
Have you tried, Eris?
No, I haven't. But if you ever seen Security Now, they were talking about LastPass, about how there's all this metadata in the database that got hacked, and they were trying to see how anybody could see what was in their database. So they were trying to do a program about how to organize it so you could easily tell what information was in there. And they made it so that the audience would write a program, like a tiny bash script that would do it. And somebody did, and they did it using I don't remember if it was Bing or ChatGPT. I think it's ChatGPT. They used that and they made some kind of what is that? The PowerShell. They made a PowerShell script that had a GUI, and they hadn't written something in PowerShell before, but they apparently it came out pretty close, but there were some errors which they corrected it and it worked.
What's the thing they just put into VS, or no, not VS Code, into GitHub? The assistant. technology, sidecar, not sidecar,
Copilot.
Copilot. Thank you,
Yeah.
Vince. Have you played around? See, that to me, they're somewhat analogous. Where, I mean, I guess ChatGPT is just going to do it for you. And some people have accused Copilot of being similar, where it's just sort of doing stuff. But I don't think that's true. I think Copilot's much more about you need to know what you want to do. So you'd have to at least have the understanding. Whereas ChatGPT, you could probably just say like, write a program in this language that does this thing.
So ChatGPT will like kind of create those things for you, but there are some times where like, man, ChatGPT will create something that works, but it's not necessarily the best way to do it, right? A lot of times where the instructions will like instantiate like data structures that don't need to be there. Like it almost it resembles less of like a professional programmer and more of like something you do in school. If you get what I mean. So like,
Yeah.
you know, adding like multiple arrays where they don't need to be there, or where a map would might have been better than like, you know, that kind of thing, right? And so like it'll work, it'll get you there, and you can refine it over and over again, of course. But Copilot is definitely more meant for like, you know, like I can't remember exactly what this thing is, and so like it's helpful to like complete things. So like I was writing a thing where I had to set some firewall rules for a Windows server, and I'm like, I don't remember the command for that. And so like I started typing the command, and it's like, oh, here's the rest. It's like, ah, yeah, that's it, right? It's more useful for that than it would be for like creating a whole thing from things. But I've also like Copilot is not just a matter of generating like code from other code. It actually is smart enough to read your current code and like recommend sort of auto completes for based on like maybe the way you've named variables. So like if I have you know a variable named video and I go to make another variable, it might like, oh, this might be audio then, right? Because you have a video, maybe you need an audio one. And then like when I create a function, like, you know, create video device, and then like another one, it's like create, oh, you mean audio device because you instantiated a video and audio variable, like that kind of thing, right? It's not even just a matter of pulling other people's stuff. It's also like intelligently helping you to write code faster. So
yeah, because I mean, it wouldn't really benefit you to just shove stuff in there. One, that you didn't really understand, and two, that didn't really relate to what you were trying to do.
Right, and I definitely think both tools are not good for new people, not good for beginners. You could learn from Copilot. Copilot has like some functionality to like explain code, and you know ChatGPT does the same, right? It'll kind of explain it. But if you're like you don't really quite understand the like what the data structure is, like how, you know, the basic object orientation or any number of these like concepts, right? If you don't understand those, it's going to give you information. You're gonna be like, yeah, sure, I'll take that. You know, it's and so it's not really good for people who are just learning, I think. But if you're like an intermediate to advanced person, it's just saving you time, saving you effort, and that's I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
Like if I ask for ChatGPT to create me a playbook for Ansible, if I don't actually know what those modules are and like what I haven't read the documentation on the module, and I'm just taking it at its word that this is what it does, and then I run it against a production server or something, you know, and it doesn't. Whoops, you know. So you kind of have to know like enough to know when it's wrong.
Yeah, and I think that if someone were trying to fake it, that wouldn't last very long. I think you'd run into
it'd be pretty quick. If anybody's doing, if your group, sorry, if your project or organization or group is doing like decent code review, it'll be obvious, right? It'll be like, wait a minute, like, did you write this? Because this doesn't seem like, you know, did you write this in middle school? Like,
right.
You know, you went to what university again?
Yeah. That was actually a good way to explain that. I've had the opportunity to sit in on a couple code reviews, and that was exactly it. Like it's not that the junior developers didn't know how to code, it was that they didn't know how to do it optimally. Right? It's the little tricks and tips of like, okay, well, you don't do an array like that. You you know, whatever the example is, like it's just, you know, because I've been doing this for 20 years, like, you know, this is the better way to do it. And not only that, but this is the way that we code everything. So we're trying to fit within a, you know, a certain structure and you know, style
Right.
and all that sort of thing. So
Correct. Yeah, it may not, you know, actually be written to proper style guidelines. That's one thing. Another thing is, you know, if I write something that's inefficient or not as performant, that's fine, I guess, if like one little thing isn't performant, as long as it's not, you know, really core thing. But if you just do that over and over again and you write, you know, you write something that's about as performant as Discord, then well, you're going to be found out, right?
yeah. Yeah. Sorry, we're gonna have to add more memory to these.
Right. Yeah.
these-
we yeah, we got the new version and we need double the memory.
Right.
But it does the same thing. I know. It's just technology moves on, man.
That's right. It's better this way.
Right.
Yeah.
You'll thank me later.
Actually, that was a big thing when here we go on a tangent, but that when multi-core processors, you know, came out, it was like, well, nothing's ever been written to take advantage of that.
Coherency is a
so-
pain.
And then the work around that is so difficult to, like, you know, actually take advantage of those threads. And still, even now, all these years later, after having multi-threaded, you know, multi-core systems, there's still very few programs that actually take advantage of it. What I guess my point is, like, optimization is difficult, and you spend a lot of time doing it, and the trade-off is, well, you need maybe less powerful hardware to run it, but then what did you save on that hardware versus what you're paying, you know, someone to sit
Right,
there
yeah.
and do the work? You know, there's
And that actually is part of what is good about things like ChatGPT and Copilot to a lesser extent, is the most of the work and software is done on that last 10-15% of the way, right? And like, if you can get software that can get you half of the way there, and you as a human only have to do a little bit of easy work and you know, the hard work at the end, and you just saved yourself a bunch of time, that's great. Like, because if you didn't have to write all sort of the boilerplate kind of thing, then that just saves you time, especially if you're a consultant or contractor and time is money.
Yeah.
Like, that's it. If you can, you know, get more jobs done in the same amount of time because you're leveraging AI tools to help you out, that's just money in your pocket right there.
Yeah, the last few weeks I've been talking to a lot of people about web development, web, you know, design and stuff. And a lot of them are like, you know, AI is going to take away everybody's jobs. Like, no one's ever going to build a web. Like, this is just the next disruptive technology. You know, it will be used by some people very effectively. Some people will ignore it, and the truth is that most of the world doesn't know how to do anything with technology, and it's not going to take any job
No, not really.
away. Like, it's fine. But there's so much of a, I don't know what's fueling it right now, but there's such a fervor around this, like, AI. Every day there's like another headline around, like,
hype cycles are hype cycles, man, regardless of what it is. Like,
but this is a big one, you know?
Yeah. Do you not remember blockchain everything for like a year and a half, right?
Blockchain, crypto, everything.
Yeah, I mean, it's just another one of those. It's not. I'm not saying it's a technology to be dismissed or anything, but let's be honest here. Like, these hype cycles come and go, right?
Yeah.
You just have to, like, weather the craziness and then actually come out with real solutions at the end of it.
And hopefully you don't have a management staff that, like, jumps on every bandwagon.
Everything on the cloud. Wait, why is it so expensive? Oops.
What do you mean we don't have control of anything anymore?
So how can we undo this somewhat? Yeah, and now we have hybrid cloud, right? That's hybrid cloud is code word for we effed up and put too much in the cloud and need to bring some back.
Right.
Yeah. I saw that one coming, though. Working for corporate America, it's like, oh, we'll put this all in the cloud. We'll have it done elsewhere. And then, so it did. It happened. Then, we need an on-site mirrored server to be able to handle the load. Like,
right.
You didn't think about that ahead of time, huh? You didn't realize that was like a core piece of functionality for storing all this data, and you just decided to kick it out to go someplace else.
Yeah, your business is this technology, and now this technology is somewhere where it can go down. and you have no control over it. And sure, there's
Right.
SLAs and stuff like that, but when that fiber cut happens
Right.
or whatever, you know.
Whoops. Yeah.
Yep.
So the thing is, like, talking about the hype cycle thing, like I remember when the Xbox One was coming out, and there were always like there's this drumbeat of like the cloud is going to improve our gaming. We can like make the box more powerful by leveraging the cloud, because this is this is 2013, right? This is like
Mhm.
peak everything cloud time, right? And like, guess what? It never happened. It never did. The whole time, not
Nope.
once. The closest thing you got were like these Drivatar things in Forza, which are basically just AI drivers that like they
Mhm.
store data in the cloud and still ran on your box. But
Yeah.
like, it never happened because like it's it's
Yeah.
it's always
Yeah,
those
for
things. And unfortunately,
well,
I will not be too proud to admit that I get caught up in that just as much as anyone else, right? Like I do. And
it's hard not
yeah,
to,
it's hard
man.
not to, because you're like, man,
It's
look how
really,
great this is. And then like
yeah,
afterwards, you're like, I guess it was all right.
yeah.
And then you're like, everyone's like, why aren't you really hyped about this? Don't you have somewhere else to be?
I think we get so far ahead of ourselves with the projecting like what's possible. And a lot of that's good conversation to have, but to start making like, you know, like real decisions and like process changes based on it is dangerous. And of course someone has to be first, whatever, but yeah, like these things do, like, you know, you were just talking about having, you know, cloud, you know, co-located processing and like whatever, like offloading cycles and all that kind of stuff. And in 2013, the high-speed networks and broadband wasn't what it is today. You know, I think you could probably do some of the things they were trying to do then now, except that the hardware is so much more powerful locally that why bother,
Mhm.
you know? So
Yeah.
unless you're Nate and you're rocking that C64, baby,
Heck yeah.
you could use some compute cycles. Hook that C64 up to the cloud provider somewhere, and
I was thinking somehow if I could like incorporate like a Raspberry Pi to like handle some additional functionality external, then like display it through the Commodore 64. It'd be cheating, and you'd only get 16 colors, so it'd make YouTube a lot of fun, I'm sure.
I think that instead of Star Trek 1 being V'ger, it should have been like Commodore.
Yes.
Right? Right? Somehow a Commodore 64 gets launched into space. And
Well, then it'd be very musically competent because of the SID chip on the Commodore 64. So that actually would have been a much more musical Star Trek.
You've actually put thought in this, haven't you?
Just now, I just pulled that out of the old hat,
Okay. All right.
or perhaps some other words. I want to get to this article about the Linux kernel dropping file systems. So the JFS file systems days are numbered. So IBM developed the JFS file system originally in the 90s era for AIX and a second generation implementation, then ported it to Linux after it was made open source. And I think like Reser file system, that one stopped getting developed after a tragic event happened. We don't have to rehash that. And basically the community just decided to drop the technology because of what the person did, which I understand it. And now there's, not a whole lot of Linux distributions are using JFS. And so I do have an article here. If you want to check it out, read it. And the what I want to ask though is when should a file system be removed from the Linux kernel? When should support go away for it? Is there a reason to keep a file system around just for historical value, or to be able to, if you stumble upon something that you need to access that data on a strange, a very unique file system, wouldn't it be a loss to not be able to do that? I know, Mark, I don't know if you've ever actually had to deal with such things where you had to recover data or access something that was a little bit older. Maybe it's not an issue at all, and keeping JFS in the kernel is just a waste of ones and zeros. What are your thoughts on that?
I would say if something becomes insecure, absolutely we need to get rid of it. Or if there was major bugs or something. I'm not sure about for other reasons. Yeah, I'm not quite sure.
Maybe if it was unduly difficult or time consuming to maintain.
Yeah.
Man, it's gonna kill me when they remove Riser FS.
I think the last distribution to use Riser FS was SUSE. They hung on to it for quite a while, and then they dumped it for, I think, ButterFS or XFS or one of the two at some point in time. But that is planned to have that dropped out of the kernel in 2025. So that's coming up pretty quick here. And then as far as JFS, I think they're just going to first they'll deprecate it and then they'll remove it, I guess. But
Actually, I was just making a joke, but yeah.
No,
I know you were.
Yeah, but it was a joke, but it was also a serious thing because I mean there probably could still be old SUSE boxes out there, but then again you'd probably transition the data off those boxes before you were to. I don't really know.
Hope.
I mean,
Is there any modularity to that? Like if it's support for the file system isn't in the kernel, then you can't possibly like sideload it, or can it be a module or like some other way?
I mean, DKMS modules are a thing. Kernel modules are a thing.
Yeah.
Developed by Dell. So, I mean, it could be turned into a module if needed, but I don't know how any of that works. I basically know, I know that they exist. I mean, basically the NVIDIA is a kernel module. When you add that, VirtualBox is a kernel module. I don't know what it takes to create a module.
Yeah.
But even if you just had like read-only access to something like that, maintain something along those lines. I do know like 3 years ago, the Amiga file systems were added back into the Linux kernel, even though they're extremely old. But they were actually added and are so you can use those natively now within Linux, read and write access. I guess it was always there, but never actually totally it lost some maintenance, so it wasn't working quite right. But now it's actually back and being maintained because it was being utilized so much. So maybe when things get old enough, but I don't know. I mean, Amiga's it's a particular computer that has some charm that's from an era, but JFS is not like it was put on any particular system that was very unique to anything. Like nobody cares. It was old.
I mean, that's kind of what I'm thinking though. Like, one, is there an expectation that we just maintain everything that's in the kernel forever and then just end up with this monolithic?
That's the problem.
Yeah. Right.
When do you start dropping hardware support?
If there is a strategy of being able to offload things as modules and then just say like, we're not going to have this in the mainline kernel because our strategy for that is to not have this monolithic, constant backwardly compatible, thing. But if you need access to it, here's a way to do it. I think having it be monolithic is a bad idea, personally. I think technology at a certain point, you may have a use case, maybe even something that's mission critical. I mean, the thing that pops into my head sitting here is software that was written specifically for like Internet Explorer, like a version of Internet Explorer, and then an enterprise's need to keep that running.
Mm-hmm.
And so, having situations where, you would go into an organization and they're running, a very, very old version of something simply because that's what's compatible. Does that mean that everybody should, that Microsoft should be responsible for maintaining Internet Explorer 6 with security patches and all of that? Like, I don't know. I don't think that's fair. So I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know either. Anyway, I thought that was an interesting article because I know there's a lot of efficiencies that are done to the code to make it more efficient in the kernel, but they're also constantly adding things as well. And when is it time for something to go? And when can something be a module? I guess that'd be what I would ask.
Yeah, I don't know enough about it, but if that was a viable option, then I would say then that's sort of the way that you kind of just say, look, we can't continue to maintain this because it hasn't been mainstream technology in 10 years or however long. But we understand that might be a problem for some people. So here's a method that you could, keep using it.
Right. So, Eric, I see you got rid of Windows on your desktop PC.
I did.
So
I was running Windows on here simply because, well, part of it is because I'm just lazy. And I had and I had things hosted on here like Plex server and just some other things where it was just kind of like it's all set up already. And the other big one was DaVinci Resolve and having video editing and some other things like that where it was all just configured and running. And it was not just the task of deploying something else, but then it's also redeploying all this software as well. I was able to withstand using Windows until about last week.
Mhm.
And then I don't even know that it's fair to blame Windows anymore. I guess I'm just so used to using Linux that the most basic things, the way I interact with Windows, like on the desktop, the way the desktop functions, and I'm not talking like high level, like tiling window manage. Like I'm just saying like really basic things, tabbing, tabs in a file manager, for example. The fact that Explorer has to spawn a new window every time is it's maddening to me. It's messy. Like, why do I need 6 windows open? Like, if I had just tabs, like, and there's just some things like that in Windows. I just cannot for the life of me figure out how it's 2023 and we just haven't somehow put that into play.
Yeah.
Which just makes me, it's Windows is such a lazy, it's so unimaginative and so boring and so lazy. Like there's so little like joy and interest in it to me. Like I use it and I'm just like, it's an appliance. I get as much joy out of using it as I get out of using like my stove. It's just, and maybe I'm just weird and I expect computers to be interesting, but anyway, okay. Reasons aside, I wanted to use, I have to use DaVinci Resolve. It's just what I use to edit videos. So I installed Ubuntu first because it's what I'm most comfortable with. That was easy to get it all set up and all that. But then I tried to install DaVinci Resolve, which it did install. That wasn't the issue. There was no audio. And I was on Ubuntu 22.10, which is their first release with Pipewire. And I had a really hard time trying to figure out what was at fault. Was it some sort of ALSA compatibility layer? Was it, Pipewire? Was it like, for the life of me, was it my hardware? Like there were so many variables and I could not pin it down. And there was very little information online to help me. And I got to that tipping point of having spent probably 6 hours working on it. And I finally just said, okay, this is dumb. DaVinci themselves say that the supported distribution is CentOS, and I wasn't going to run CentOS. So I'm like, okay, well, Fedora is the the closest thing to that I would want to run as a desktop OS. And so I put Fedora on here. I was apprehensive because the last 3 or 4 times that I've tried Fedora, stretching back over the last 5 or 6 years, it's Fedora has always been a pretty solid base, but then as a workstation, and it is called Fedora Workstation. It's not Fedora Desktop. It's not Fedora Home Operating System. It's Fedora Workstation. And so from that perspective, it's great for development and for different things. But my problem was always trying to make it a general purpose desktop and having codecs and all the software I wanted access to, and so that always stopped me in the past. But this time, there was very little friction. I was able to get almost everything. Well, no, I was able to get everything that I needed, and some of it was a repository and an RPM package, and some of it was flat packs and app images. And at the end of the day, DaVinci works just fine. With a caveat, there's an asterisk there. but yeah, so switching over to Linux didn't go as planned because I'm not using Ubuntu, but the good news is that using Fedora is working, and it's actually been pretty enjoyable.
And did you have any issues with like drivers, like codecs, or getting
Oh
DaVinci
yeah.
Resolve?
So for some reason, so RPM Fusion, I think most people probably know that RPM Fusion is a third-party repository where all of the software that's encumbered with patents or that isn't free software basically was kept, including drivers. So there's a very well documented process of installing drivers, NVIDIA drivers from RPM Fusion. And actually, the installer even gives you the option to enable it. Before, it used to be you'd have to go to the RPM Fusion website and then follow some commands and you sort of get it set up and going. And now it's as easy as literally just clicking a button and saying enabling third-party repositories. And so that part is really easy. What was really confusing is I did what the instructions said to do, and I kept getting this error and nobody. When I get an error message and I go and I search for it and I don't get any results, that's usually to me like I've somehow veered off the map.
Right.
You know, because if you get a usual error, okay, great. Okay, here's how, we fix that, and fine. I don't have a problem with that. But when I can't find what's going on, like even a hint, then it becomes unnecessarily difficult to deal with. In this case, I thought this was actually pretty interesting. NVIDIA apparently maintains a repository for Fedora where they build the DKMS version of their driver. So you basically hook into this repository, install their versions of the main NVIDIA driver, and then CUDA if that's something you're using, and it's like an official NVIDIA driver, which is pretty cool. And that
That's super
worked.
cool.
Yeah, it's like wow, NVIDIA is actually doing some work. Anyway, so that worked fine. The caveat I have with DaVinci is this is the problem I've had with a lot of commercial software over the years. Even if it will run on Linux, there's usually some way that it's lesser, that it's not as good as than it would be on a commercial operating system, Windows or Mac. And in this case, for some reason, DaVinci Resolve wants to use a very specific codec, both for reading and writing files, encoding and decoding. And so like a 15 minute 1080p video ends up being like 30 or 40 gigabytes, which is just silly. It's like, why do I have to have it in this like super high res like pro codec? And apparently if you pay, you can buy the $300 version of the license for it, and then that does let you use H.264, but it's using the hardware accelerated version, which apparently doesn't produce very good results. So even if you have that version, it's still recommended to output it in, I think it's DNxHD. I'm probably saying that wrong, but
No, that's right.
so it's still better to do that and then convert it to H.264. So it's death by paper cuts, right? It's on Windows. I was able to, with the free version of Resolve, import a much larger set of particular codecs, and then also export directly to H.264 and have a workable file size and portability to upload or move around. Now, for whatever reason, on Linux, it's just less than. It's not as good as what ran on Windows. And it's like Zoom. Zoom is the exact same way. I ran Zoom on Windows, and guess what? Chat and participants and all the stuff that is blaringly, blindingly white on here, in Windows, I can say I want a dark mode. I want a dark version of these things.
That's because you're a second-class citizen as a Linux user, though.
And that is what kind of sticks in my craw about, I left Windows because I don't like Windows and I want to deal with Windows. But that's the platform that everybody develops for. And so now if I'm lucky enough to have this commercial package on Linux, it's in some way going to be less than the Windows version or Mac version. And that really sort of cheeses me off.
And here
Yeah.
comes the barrage of whataboutisms.
I don't care. I'm not using KDE, Kdenlive. I'm just not doing it. I don't care.
Well-
I'm glad you like it. Good. Use it all day long. I'm not using
Well, I
it.
was really thinking I wanted to shit on you a little bit. You should do this. You should do that. Just shit all over you. Maybe I can't say that.
You just did. It's okay. See, Adam, see what you did?
Whoops.
Look what you did.
That's
Took
what I
this
get.
took this beautiful little thing and you twisted it now.
That's what he does.
That's
He
Adam.
does.
What?
Anyway, and I was talking to Adam about this earlier, and it's like this is why what would drive me to get a Mac. I don't necessarily want to use a Mac. I'd rather use GNOME and live my life happily. But it's frustrating. I don't have endless time to sit here and jerk around with this stuff to get it to work. Yes, I can run FFmpeg and convert the file, and it takes 15 or 20 minutes to do, even on a performant machine. How much time do people have to just sit around and do it the hard way? Before you just say, I'm not going to live forever. I don't have endless time to sit here and do things the hard way. I'm just going to buy the machine that does this easily.
So, Eric, the thing is I think most people who do it the hard way, doing it the hard way is actually the point. Not that they want to make things harder, but that it's the sort of puzzle. It's like the figuring it out the hard way is the excitement. And then like once it's there, it's like, I guess I'll use this thing. But like it's actually getting to that point that's the fun part. At least that's how I feel about like desktop Linux and stuff. It's like when I do things there, it's like, oh, I'm doing it because it's neat. I'm doing it because like it was not meant to be made this way. I'm gonna do it anyway. And like there's like the puzzle and the excitement of that. But like, yeah, if I just need to like get straight to something, I use a Mac or Windows or whatever. But Linux is more of like a puzzle to me. So, and I don't think I'm alone in that one.
Yeah.
But then when you get into the commercial stuff, it's like, well, puzzle or no puzzle, it's not going to work. So, yeah, you do what you can, I guess.
Yeah, and I think it kind of goes hand in hand with me losing interest in that, that aspect of it where I don't want to tinker. I just want to get something done, right? If I want to make a video or edit a video or, do something with a website, whatever I want to do, like I just want to sit in front of my computer and do the thing. And there are times where running Linux makes that much harder than it needs to be. And I'm not saying it's perfect on Windows or Mac. Like that is absolutely not true because Windows proves to me over and over why I can't stand using it. Some of it's just little annoyances, but some of it's like actual problems that are hard to get around. And I know that on Linux, so, there's no better, right? There's different. And there's so much good and better, or just say good on Linux that draws me to it and makes me want to use it. But then there are these just stupid things that come up like this that make it hard for me to and maybe I'm not supposed to. Maybe I'm not supposed to just say the only solution that works for me is this one. And if something falls outside of that, then either I don't do it or I do it the hardest way possible. And maybe what I should say is, well, okay, I have a different thing. Like this thing's good at this. It's like you have a car and you have an SUV, 4-passenger, 5-passenger versus a 7 or 9-passenger. Like you can't expect to have a car and fit 9 people in it. Like it's just not going to happen. So I don't know.
It's called a van or limousine.
Thanks, Nate. I appreciate that. Anyway, that's the kind of stuff that like I don't know if it's age, what it is. It's just like I've really changed over the last 4 or 5 years where I had a real interest in like just like tinkering and making it work because I can or just because it was interesting. I could spend days just distro hopping and And yeah, I don't feel it anymore. I just want to do whatever I want to do and get it done.
Yeah, I understand that. A lot of times now, I don't want to dork around. Well, I should say, I have my tinker machines and I have my non-tinker machines. I don't say production necessarily because it sounds like I'm doing something more serious, like this, like my machine that does the streaming, recording, all that stuff. I'm not going to be distro hopping on it. There's no way, because I have it set up. Everything works. I keep it updated. I check things after updates, just in case something breaks, which it hasn't happened in a long while. And I want to just keep it working. But also, I like staying on that leading edge of software coming down to, I like my latest Plasma. I like my latest, fill in the blank here. But I understand it's like my desire to distro hop with this seriousness of I'm going to try another distro because I'm dissatisfied with where I am. I don't have that at all. I haven't actually had that in probably a decade plus now, really. Because things have just worked well enough for me. And I get the opportunity to run Windows in a VM to do some other work. And it's pretty frustrating actually.
Yeah.
Like using it just different, like I don't want to see news popping up. Like it's like the most distracting desktop I think ever made right now. It's pretty terrible. That's true. Leo says I had a name drop Tumbleweed every single time. Yes. In fact, I just knock it out right at the beginning of the show. I just say that I have an almost unhealthy obsession. But yeah, it's actually very nice relying on my computer, I guess, and it's something that I want to maintain that. But yeah, no, I understand like commercial applications or sometimes like like I'm playing with some software here that does requires me to run it in Wine to get it to work, and it works fine. But then there's just those little weird things of like translating Wine, like Linux drives to Wine, all that stuff is just kind of weird, and I don't think particularly user friendly. But the activity I'm doing isn't really user friendly either, so it's just not. But anyway, yeah, I understand that, and I don't know if DaVinci Resolve. I thought it was pretty much on par with the Windows and Linux versions were pretty much on par with one another. I thought. Maybe I'm wrong.
The functionality is there. So yeah, I mean the user interface, the tools that are available, like all that stuff is the same. I mean, there's some filters and effects and things that are a little different, but ultimately the core functionality is the same. It's just these codecs that are I'm sure there has to be some reason. I never think that a company sits down and was like Zoom or DaVinci or anyone else is like, we're going to make it intentionally terrible. Like I don't think anyone ever wants it to be that way, but there had to be some sort of concession made, whatever it is, if it's a legal thing or a, technological thing, whatever it is. And, that's where I am now is that I'm on this Fedora install. I spent a lot of time getting it set up the way I want with all the software. And that's the thing with distro hopping, even with universal package formats like like Flatpak and stuff like that. Like the act of actually going back and redeploying your system. And I know I could do, scripting and there's lots of ways I could sort of get around that, but it just takes time. It's time and energy and effort. And I put a lot into this, and like, it's annoying that I have to spend extra time converting files and re-encoding and all that. But, the alternative is, is running Windows worth that convenience? And in most cases, the answer is no. I'm happy that DaVinci, as a very capable video editor, much more capable than anything else, in my opinion, is even available on Linux. I think that's great, and so I'm happy for that, and I enjoy Linux and want to use it more than I'm annoyed. I get more pleasure and I'm more productive here. That extra step isn't going to stop me.
I got you. Well, good luck with your continued path down the Fedora lane, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
So
that's the takeaway too. That's what's exciting. Like Fedora was always hard.
Mhm.
You know, it was disappointing because I actually really have thought highly of Fedora for a long time, and then to actually use it and have a less than positive experience was always sort of a letdown. And
Right.
the fact that I installed, and it wasn't a straightforward like use my whole disk, and like I had to actually play with partitions and do some stuff in the installer, and like it all worked really, really well. And that's amazing to me. Someone at Fedora is paying attention to this and putting real effort into making it a better experience, and I see it. And that's really cool.
I will be following up on this with you probably throughout the week or even next week at the very least, because I think it'll be interesting to find out how this goes for you. I've been meaning to try DaVinci Resolve. I just haven't gotten around to it. Okay, well, it is about that time, a little bit late. So next week we're doing application Appetizer. I also want to welcome Steve for moseying his way on through the door. He probably came to the saloon already drunk, not, you know,
What?
probably drunk on
Hey,
Linux.
buddy.
So welcome.
Hey, Nate. Hey,
So-
crew.
So feel free to weigh in on this. So for the application Appetizer, I have some ideas. One is to bring your email clients of choice to talk about. I don't think we've done this before. Maybe Eris can correct me on that. So we'll just chat about email clients that we use. It can be whatever.
Email clients?
Yeah.
No, I don't think we have.
I don't think so either. So I threw it on there. The next would be Zulip, a multi-chat client, kind of like a Rambox or Wavebox, some others. So instead of having like Telegram and Discord and Slack or whatever else you use, you have one client that has all the different chat things in there. I did that for quite a while, and then I stopped doing it for some reason, and I'm thinking about it again. So we could try Zulip, see if people would like to try that out, of way of combining all their chat clients that they use. Oh, I know what I was doing. We can talk about that another time. Another one that I thought would be interesting to do is something called, I think it's Nirna. I don't know what it is exactly, but it tells games and apps that it's nap time and actually will suspend processes in your on your computer. So like it can be used to pause games, like hard pause games, any game that you would like, or anything else. So that's kind of a neat application I thought could try out as well. And then if all else fails, we can try an open source game extravaganza again. So do any of those speak to you? Reach out through the digital panel in front of you and make you think that you might want to try any of those, or want to talk about any of those next week. So email clients, a multi-chat client like Rambox or Zulip, Nirna, a way of pausing applications on your system, see if that or games, if that would be useful to you, or do an open source game again.
Personally, I think the multi-network chat would be interesting, because I used to do the same thing, and I was fascinated by being able to put, different like ICQ and all the different networks,
Right.
into one pigeon and stuff like that.
Yep.
And then also the pausing. I'm trying to think though, because I wouldn't be pausing games. Like, what would I be pausing? I don't know. Does it free up memory, stuff like that? So that one might be interesting as well. So,
any other thoughts? Adam, Vince, Jinda, Mark. Jinda will do pretty much whatever. We could tell him we're gonna test out, a potato or something, and he'll probably be all for it. He'll slice it, he'll dice it, he'll fry it.
Pretty much.
Well, I did see in the chat from Ulfnick, he said think he said that the what did he say? Maybe I missed it. Maybe it wasn't him. Oh, Zulip sounds very interesting. So the multi-chat client. So I got 2 votes for that, and then crickets from everybody else. So
That might be interesting.
yeah,
What does it bridge? I mean, how many clients can you use in it?
that's part of the exploration, buddy.
Ah,
It was recommended on Destination Linux a few weeks ago.
He's that guy who cheats in class.
Yeah, he is. Rubbernecker looks over and sees which one you circled. All right, so let's do that. Zulip. Next week, we'll do the Zulip multi-chat client. It's like Rambox, but it's not Rambox, so we'll see how that goes. I'll put the link in the chat so the folks at home can play along next week as well. Well, if you have any suggestions, it can be anything. It can be an application, any news or topics, distributions, send them to suggestions@linuxsaloon.com. I'd be more than happy to jump on some of those suggestions and throw them on the list of things. So check that out. Or send me an email to suggestions@linuxsaloon.com. And also, we have a Linux Saloon calendar, so you can see what's the upcoming show for the weekend. So if you're wondering, well, what is the topic? You can go to linuxsaloon.com or cubiclenate.com/linuxsaloon. The same page, basically. It is the same page. One's just a redirect. You can look like next week, this application Appetizer TBD. Right now, it'll be updated tonight, and it'll say something else. It'll say Zulip. And it looks like I've slacked a little bit, and I got to put some more. I got to fill out the calendar a little bit more. I'll get to that this week. Oh, also, when I release a show, I do a little blathering about it, some additional thoughts. So you can check that out, cubiclenate.com. I do some blathering, post publication of the show. So sometimes people give me some notes after the fact, and I will include some of that stuff that we didn't necessarily talk about in the show. It'll be there. All right, so Steve, I got the notification in YouTube saying you're doing a show tomorrow.
that's the plan.
All right, so you're not going to skate out on me, are you?
I'm trying not to. I almost had to go into work tonight.
Oh man, I'm glad you got out of that.
I got a 3-day weekend here, and I knew I was going to get screwed up.
That's what happens. And then, so what's your topic for tomorrow?
It's going to be on kind of like the community do's and don'ts when dealing with the community.
Okay. It's like how to be a good open source citizen.
Sort of how to be actually a good, we'll say a good YouTuber, a good, content creator, and how you treat your, the do's and don'ts you do with your community.
Cool. And is this like taken probably from personal experience? What's worked out
A little
well for you?
bit. Some things have happened this week that kind of spurred it on.
Excellent. Well, I look forward to that. That'll be a fun topic for me tomorrow morning when I'm doing things. Mark.
Okay.
The Atlanta Linux enthusiasts. Do you meet at
Yes.
3 p.m. Eastern still, or do you shift your time?
Nope, we still meet every Sunday from 3 to 6 p.m. Eastern. There's no set agenda. People can join, and we do a Jitsi meeting. And if you have a problem, you can ask for help. Of course, you got to manage your own issue and make sure you get the help that you want. Many times we'll help people getting new into Linux and maybe help them with the audio or something else. But yeah, it's a online meetup. You can find out more about that at ale.org. We're also on Meetup. And yeah, anyone's welcome to join.
Excellent. Well, be sure to check out ALE, the Atlanta Linux enthusiasts, tomorrow. If you have time, hop on. It's always a good time. A lot of smart people. It's like a brain trust or something like that. Linux User Space, the next episode they'll be dropping is Endless OS. So that'll be on March 13th. You can check that out. But the episode that just came out was about Plasma, passwords, browsers, and some feedback. And you can try to listen to Linux User Space at anything more than 1x but you're not going to be able to because Leo is a fast talker, but he enunciates well. I'm on a podcast called Linux Out Loud. We talked about unpopular tech opinions, our part 2 on that. We had so much fun with part 1. We carried a lot of it over to part 2. So be sure to send all your hate mail to Matt. But doing the show with Matt and Wendy is a lot of fun, or at least Wendy anyway. I have a website called keepitwhenlate.com. I did an article recently on Nico, a Matrix client for chatting using the Matrix Fediverse. So it was kind of fun. Linux Saloon is part of the Tux Digital Network. Check out more great shows at tuxdigital.com. I want to thank you all for your support, however you do it, being a part of the conversation in both the Zoom meeting and the YouTube stream, as well as everyone for watching the show after the fact. I want to thank everyone involved in making the Linux and open source tools possible for us to not only have this conversation, but also to have fun and enjoy our technology. Linux truly puts personal back into personal computer. Thank you for stopping by. Be sure to tip your developers, and please remember to Linux responsibly. Until next time, see yas.
Yeah.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.
Goodbye.
So long, farewell. Making sure the levels were good there.
Listen, I know that all your routing software and 3D.
Oh,
We lost his voice.
your computer muted on you. Oh, and then you froze.
Oh,
printing
oh,
software
it's
and
right
all
near
runs
8
better
o'clock.
on
It's
them.
time for him to go nuts. He does it every.
You know, I even installed the native package thinking, okay, maybe something's up with Flatpak or something, but it's got to be my network.
Who knows?
So anyway, whatever I said though was the funniest thing you would have ever heard. So it's probably good that I didn't get it out there because then we'll just spend the next 10 minutes laughing. I mean,
Right.
let's just move on, you know. Well, I
And
believe.
I will.
Good.
Nate, you're muted.
I think the last. Sorry about that. Does that mean?
I was.
All right, so it is closing time. Wait, did I miss anything? Before I... Linux truly puts personal back into personal computer. I'll say that again.